Hey everyone, Chris Kidder once again interviewing another fantastic guest. We have Greg Dean, the professor of comedy, with us today. He's going to share all kinds of information, techniques for newcomers. Even if you're really experienced, this is some amazing information. You have to check out this interview. You can go below in the description. You can find links to his website, his books, his classes, all that great stuff. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, like, love, all that jazz. If you have any questions for me, drop them in the comment section below. I love you folks. Here we go with the interview. Greg, if you can, for our listeners and for the viewers out there, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, a little bit. Oh. All right. Well, well, I'll just keep the stuff kind of related mostly to comedy right now. I just did a lot of theater in my hometown of Modesto, comedy roles, and then I went off to Ringling Brothers Clown College and became a clown for a while, and traveled with Ringling, lived on a train, did clowning there. Which is a whole lot of fun. Let me tell you, to be a circus clown in your 20s is fantastic. Not in your 70s or 80s. And I knew some clowns, and they were like, "Don't be me." Okay, so I didn't. I got together with a partner at that time, a guy named Michael Davis, who then later went on to be in Sugar Babies on Broadway, the #1 running show there for many years in New York. We did like 4 years together, circuses. Then we became street performers together in San Francisco, Pier 39, all the places there, Ghirardelli Square, etc. And we started talking. Had to learn how to talk. Terrifying, just terrified to talk, because we were so used to doing shows where we just juggled and did funny things. And then we started talking to the audience. Well, that was a transition to learn how to talk and start doing jokes. From there, we split up as a team. I moved to Los Angeles to kind of follow an acting career, and started doing improv at the Comedy Store, and then I started teaching the improv. And then it was a whole evening of where I was doing the potluck players. I trained them on the weekends, perform with them, and then I had my own troupe of improvisers there at the Comedy Store in the main room, the big room. And I included Andy Garcia, the actor. Him and I were good friends, and we did that for a couple of years. And then I was also took my comedy juggling act, and I was the opener. I did like 15 minutes before the Comedy Store players came on. And that included Robin Williams, Marty Short, Jim Belushi would drop by now and then. A lot of Second City people at that time. Wow, Taylor Negron, Jim Stahl, lots of folks. I can't remember. John Ritter was in and out. And so that went on for a few years. That was a whole lot of fun because, we were, Robin was in Mork and Mindy at the time, so they packed that place every Monday night. It was great. It was just shows. And I was performing 3 times a night. So it was just a blast. And from that, I became a paid regular at the Comedy Store. My name's on the wall there. And so that paid regular. And for the next several years, I just performed there a lot. And all. So.
And I have to verify your name is on the wall. It took me a second to find it, but I did find it. There's so many names on that wall, but I'm like, Greg said he's on the wall. I'm going to go find it. And I found you. It took me about 20 minutes, but I found it. Awesome. Well, Greg, how did you really like roll into teaching? Like, is that where you really found your love? And how long have you been teaching comedians?
Well, I've been teaching since 1982. Actually, was kind of a really slow transition, because I've kind of reinvented and slid from one passion to another, because I only do things that are in. And at first it was theater, and then it was clowning, and then it was street performing. I mean, I did tons of street performing. I was at the Renaissance fairs here in California, And I made my full living from that. On weekends, I'd make a great deal of money, and then I just keep it all and live in a crappy little place in downtown Los Angeles. And and then as a paid regular at the Comedy Store, there was the Westwood Comedy Store, a little place over there, and that's where everybody really worked out their material. But, Paul Rodriguez is there, and Sam Kinison, and Dice Clay, and Robin, and pretty much Bill Hicks, knew him pretty well. We were all there, and nobody wanted the 9 o'clock time slot, the first paid regular times. And I went to Mitzi there. I said, give them all to me. So I got, and there'd only be 5-7 people in there, but that was okay with me because I'd go and experiment and just play and mess around. And the other comedians I'd see their shows, and I'd just, they'd go, what do you think? And I'd give them some advice. They go, wow, you should teach. You're really good at this. And I went, no, I'm not going to teach. I'm a comedian. I'm a full-time, I make my profession. I make my living as a comedian and had for many years. And so, at one point I started, I thought, oh, let me open up a stand-up comedy class, just one quick little class back in 1982, wrote a little book for it and all, and started teaching, and there was a huge demand. I had really full classes because I was the only one doing it.
Yeah.
I was in the market for like 10 years all by myself before Judy Carter wrote a book and came in, and I was trying to stop the growth of that business. I had so many people, and I was like, no, I don't want to teach every night. I'm out in the clubs. I'm performing. I'm making a living. And plus I was acting, and I was in commercials and making money doing that, and little TV shows here and there and stuff. I never broke through into anything major with the acting, but I was doing it. And then at the Renaissance Fair, I played a character that I developed called the Obscene Juggler. The answer to your question is my balls. That's what I was juggling. I'd juggle 3, shake my ass, and say I was doing 5. The jokes like that. That was very bawdy and very, and I was very attacking. It was like an insult comic kind of a thing, but I'd molest the audience, and it's hard to explain. But I was making $850 a day there, and just cash. People just give it to me. And so I just, I lived off of that for years. And then one day, some guy came and said, hey, we're shooting a movie called Ladies Night Out about the new phenomenon of male strippers at Chippendales. And in the television movie, would you be the opening act because you're the obscene juggler? So I went and did that. And that's where I got my SAG-AFTRA and really got into the business at that point, because then I was in the union, and that was huge. And then the owner came to me and said, hey, will you stay on and open for the dancers? And I did. And it took me 3 months to learn how to play that crowd, because it was brutal. Those women are yelling, take it off, right? And I'd explain to them that mine wasn't detachable.
They want to see dick.
Yeah. I was in the way of them, seeing the dancers. And finally, I'm really proud of this as like a comedian. I figured out a strategy that allowed me to work the crowd. I'd have the MC say, hey, you have to have it somewhat quiet so you can hear every dirty thing this man's gonna talk dirty to you. Ooh, they'd get quiet, and I'd come out and say, there's some good news and some bad news. The good news is I'm not going to take off my clothes. And they would cheer and applaud to pull a joke on me, like to say, we don't want you to take off your clothes. Right. Yeah. And I'd say the good news is I'm going to talk dirty to you and get you all ready and moist for the dancers. Yeah. And the third line on that one was, ladies, I'm your foreplay. And of course, women love foreplay. So they were like, I was their foreplay, and they were listening to me, and I did a 15-minute show. Again, bawdy, kind of dirty, kind of, I never cussed. It was all sexual innuendo. And bouncing off the women and saying stuff to them and letting them touch my balls. I mean, it was fun, and I made $100 a show, and I was doing 6 to 9 shows a week. I was, and then I do Renaissance fairs on the weekend and the acting, and I was making really good money as a comedian full time. And I did the class in 1982, and it was interesting. It was kind of fun. And then I guess the transition kind of started probably in 1983, 84, something like that. I was teaching, one class a week for a while, and then I ran into one student, and he was like, I'd say, oh, do it this way, do it that way. And he went, well, that's your way. I don't want to do it your way. I want you to teach me to do it my way. And I don't know what that is, but I don't want to do it your way. And at first I was very defensive. I was like, don't you know my sense of humor is better than yours? And he was like, no, I don't know that. Your sense. And I went home and thought, wow, he's right. My sense of humor isn't better than anybody else's. Mine is mine. And wow, if I'm going to teach joke writing, and this was the moment where the transition really happened. I said, okay, what's a joke? And back in 1982, there was no fundamentals for teaching stand-up comedy. Zero, nothing whatsoever. The best I found was when I was in my hometown, even of Modesto, California, and I wanted to know something about it. There was only one book on comedy writing, and it was for writing radio. Wow. The 40s and 50s, Jack Benny and Bob Hope and Milton Berle when they were on radio. And there was some good things in it. And it was a real, I found it at the library and stole it. I have it to this day. I mean, I paid for the book. I just kept it, and then they sent me a notice, and I paid for the book. And so when I moved here, I went to it, and there wasn't that much. And then I asked the question, what's a joke? And then for the next 15 years, I went about answering that question. There was like all the information was like wasn't very good. It was all lost in what I considered content. They put exaggeration jokes along with sex jokes or mother-in-law jokes. I went, wait, exaggeration, that's kind of a form of thinking, and those other ones are a category. It's like, why are they putting these together, the people that were trying? I mean, none of this made any sense to me. And I found an article one time in Psychology Today by a guy named Victor Raskin, a linguist out of, I think out of Purdue at that time. I think he still is the head of linguistics there. I know him now. He's a friend. And I read it, and he said he had the first breakthrough in humor theory. And I didn't know there was such a thing as humor theory, but there was. There was a lot of academics all over the world trying to answer the same question I was. And I read his stuff, and it was linguistic based. It was all linguistic. It was all about language. And I kind of extended his work a little bit, and I kind of used his concept and credited it in my book and said, this is Victor Raskin said this, and this is how I kind of went in, because I was a circus clown and street performer, and so a lot of physical stuff and juggling jokes and all kinds of things, and the linguistics didn't really cover it, right? It was just about the language of a joke. And I'm like, wait a second, there's all this behavior that's in it as well. So I changed the language a little bit, expounded on that, and then slowly emerged the mechanisms that connect. Well, all jokes have two parts. That's huge. That really goes back to Aristotle and Socrates, where they said there's expectation and surprise. And now that everybody kind of knows that, that's not a big deal. That's 5,000 years old or something. I love it. The teachers go, "Oh, I've got the secret. That's 5,000 years old." But they were the first one to write down, and it was important in humor theory because it was really saying, oh, jokes have two parts, expectation and surprise. It's two parts. And that's huge because a joke is about these two parts and then how they get connected. And that's what I kind of solved. So did the International Society of Humor Studies, but they did it academically. And it's hard to understand. I read many of the books and the papers and stuff like that. And then I devised these three mechanisms: the target, assumption, connector, and reinterpretation. The connector being one thing with two interpretations, as at the center of all jokes. And that's what connects the first part and the second part. Now, with one-liners, that's setup and punch. I love that because on the internet with YouTube, people say this is joke structure. That's not joke structure. That's just the way you express a one-liner. We express humor through cartoons and comic strips and sketches and sitcoms and movies. And like in movies, from one shot to another shot can be the two parts of a joke. So understanding joke structure is really understanding those three mechanisms that connect the first part and the second part. Okay. That's when you get into joke structure. And once I start understanding that, once I got that, then a joke writing system came to me from a dream. Really, I was like writing on it and trying to understand it, and fell asleep on my couch, and like it just kind of bubbled up out of my brain, and I woke up and went, oh my goodness, oh wow. And so I sat down and wrote the bones of that, and then wrote the whole system called the Joke Prospector, which is still the only system that will actually teach anybody to start at zero, at no idea whatsoever, take you into a topic, understanding premises, and then how to write setups, and then connect those setups to write punches by finding through the structure. So literally step by step to actually teach somebody to write a joke. Before that, I taught a system called the two-list system. I learned it from a guy named Ron Carver and another guy in San Francisco, Cantu. Can't remember his first name. It was being taught, and I taught it at first. And it's a simple system. What you do is you pick a subject like hospitals and you make an association list. And you give it a trait like it's torture and you make an association list. And the third step in that system is now write jokes. Now, for somebody like me who had a model in my head of what a joke was, I wrote a lot of jokes. The system was great for me. I know this, and give it a trait, and then, write all these jokes. So I taught it. And 50% of my students were like me, would write a whole lot of jokes. And 50% of my students would go, I have no idea what you want me to do. Well, yeah, write a joke. I don't know what a joke is. I don't know what you want me to do. And again, I listened to my students and went home and went, well, if they don't know what to do, then again, that ties into what's a joke? What is a joke? How do I teach them that? That was also part of the transition of spending 15 years finding and understanding and uncovering joke structure. Because from my point of view, I haven't really invented anything. I guess I invented a joke writing system that was based upon it, but mostly and ways to present the fundamentals of comedy. And that was the transition. As time went on, I found myself more interested in modeling out what comedians were doing because nobody else was doing it. There's tons of comedians out there, and many of them better than me. Okay, I'd be another comedian, and at some point, I'm realizing, wow, this is important stuff. I have this goal of really trying to lay out the fundamentals of stand-up comedy. Like, well, there's fundamentals for everything. Every sport I ever played, there's all, and in sports for every position. I'd taken ballet back when I was in theater, and I'd say all the technique behind it, and I'd taken art classes and all the technique behind it, and acting, all the technique behind it, and improv, all the technique behind it. And then I started teaching stand-up, no technique, nothing. That it was that two-list joke writing system, and that was about it. A little bit of advice about rhythm of 3 jokes and to put your punch at the end of the punch. But overall, there just wasn't much.
Yeah.
So it became slowly my passion started to move more toward that. And even away from the acting. I found myself one time in an acting audition. And there was Chris Lemon, Jack Lemon's son. I knew him from acting classes over there, and Adam Arkin, who's now doing really, really, and some other people. Remember, and we're all sitting in the same room waiting for an audition. And I'm like, when can I get out of here and get home, work on my book? And that's when I went, all these people, 100% of their soul is into acting. And I'm sitting around going, when can I get out of here and go work on my book? So I went home, called my agents, said I quit. I'm just obsessed. Well, in like 1985, 86, I heard about Tony Robbins, who's now quite something. But back then he was struggling putting his whole thing together and stuff, and he was teaching. So I went and took his class, did a fire walk with him, and then stuck around for like 6-8 months, became his personal assistant for a while. I did a 30-foot fire walk with him. He gave me a jacket with my name on it. I still got a nice little, silk jacket. It was gorgeous. And worked with him for a while. And then got to know that he was teaching a lot of stuff that was teaching was called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP stuff. And then he was gone so much out working, and we'd see him once in a while. I decided, and then John Grinder came into town, who was one of the co-founders, John Grinder and Richard Bandler. And they had split up as a team, and John Grinder was here in town teaching like 6 months. So I signed up for that. And got along with John great because he was looking in the acting at the time. I told him about my work with stand-up, and so he started helping me and working with me in an area of NLP called modeling. And not modeling, but to model out an idea, to pull. And he taught me, you need to find these deep-level fundamentals and not get lost in content. And so he taught me this whole thing about that you have to have an explanation of how it affects the senses. That's how you get a fundamental. That how is the mind dealing with something rather than the categories of it, right? And as I came up with things, he would say, you're right on here, you're missing here, and he worked with me and then I started teaching side by side with him. All over California, in Monterey and Santa Cruz, San Diego, LA. He invited me to teach next to him because I'd learned, then I was ahead of his master track for a year too. I taught a bunch of other people the mastery of it. So I'm a master practitioner and master trainer in NLP, certified by John, and he was doing the same thing. He'd look into a certain area of psychology and pull out the techniques, or in hypnosis and pull out the techniques, and that's what they were doing. And I was doing the same thing with comedy. That's why I say I don't invent anything. It became my job and that's where I got obsessed. This is where the passion shifted. The teaching was fun and good but that was the way of working out how to teach it to people. But the really great part was as you start to understand these techniques, and once you understand joke structure, you start looking at jokes, you start seeing things that other people aren't seeing. And then I started looking at comedians and kind of going, look at that technique that person's doing. I'm going home, write it down. And I kept collecting those things. They were, so my job, I ended up creating like a model for everything, which is my job was to identify the technique that either a comedian or a joke writer, comedy writer was using. And then as a teacher, I'd turn it into an exercise. And if my students did the exercise, and this is where John Grinder really helped me, turn it into an exercise, the students would attain that technique exercise. They would attain that technique as an actual behavioral skill that they could do. Doesn't mean they'd be great at it, but that was the model. Was to so that it wasn't just kind of the difference between teaching people what writing a unicycle is, and then there's some techniques. Okay, here they are. Oh, yeah, well, okay, now I know what that is. But if you teach them the exercises, right, and you get them to practice and you help them when they fall down and get up and fall down and hurt themselves and get upset and all that kind of stuff, and you're there and they keep practicing, pretty soon they're able to ride the unicycle. And that's what I was after with my students, as I taught them each of these techniques. If they spent the time with me, not everybody did, they kind of learn them a little bit and then go off and do other things, whatever. But the people that spend a year with me or something, that pretty soon they're all getting really, really good at these techniques. And their stand-up would improve exponentially, because some of my students would go out and perform in the smaller shows around Los Angeles, and people would come and say, "Hey, how long you been doing stand-up?" And they'd say, 3-4 months. and these other comedians go, "Oh, shut up. No, piss off. Nobody can be that good at stand-up in that short a time. You're too good at this. You're lying." And they come and tell me the story. I go, why do they say that? Because my students were highly skilled. Now, let me make a distinction in that. They had no experience. You could see the blatant inexperience, yet their jokes were well written, the tags were clear, their premises were clear, the stories were well staged. There's so much of the technique that was so sophisticated, and they were able to do them. Yet you could see they just didn't quite know how to perform really well. And because there is no substitution for stage time, you still, even if you learn all the techniques I teach people, and I teach a lot of technique that can just cut years off of their development time, you still got to put in your 10,000 hours of performing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Franklin Ajay. I performed with him at a club in Texas. It was Houston, the comedy workshop there, and it was Easter, so I ended up having dinner with him at Paul Menzel's house, and we were talking, and he was saying to me, "Yeah, I've been doing this about 10 years, and I think I'm just getting a handle on it." And at that time, he was like the comedian's comedian. He was the one we all looked up to and went, yeah, that's what I want to be, Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I think after 10 years, I think I'm starting to. We had a long discussion about emotions. He was like, "Oh, so when you're working with people, you're teaching them to be very emotional about it." And I went, "Yeah," because a lot of times how you're responding to let's say the subject or whatever it is you're talking about, the way you're responding to it is as much of a joke as the actual language of it. That was, and that came from my joke diagram to say, oh, there's kind of categories. There's the language, there's the character, there's a situation, there's a physical bit. Each one of those has its own structure within a show, along with the bit, like behavioral jokes. There's a lot of behaviors you can do that can do joke structure, your emotions, the character you're using, sound effects you can put in there, your intent, the physical things you can do with the joke that also adds to that structure that connects them, right? That those are the tools. And so I would break those down and teach those individually as well at different times in my 40 years of teaching, because I get bored with what I'm doing. So it's like it's like I teach in the performing, and you know this, is you may be doing essentially the same material, but you should never be doing the same interpretation of that material.
Yeah.
Should interpret it for and with the audience that's in front of you, and in a feedback loop. In other words, the audience is having an impact on the rhythm of the show. I mean, even at the lowest possible level of that, the audience should have an influence that you take a pause for the laughs. So they're having an influence on the show. So to get them to be able to, have fun and let the show have another interpretation each time. So breaking those things down and understanding them, and understanding that model for me. Oh, I found something. Here's the exercise. Get the students do the exercise, and they got the skill, and then put them up in my advanced classes and give them a really safe place to be bad.
Yeah.
Because if it's worth doing badly. And well, you're going to be bad at something that you're not good at for a while, and you need a supportive place and stand up where, like with the unicycle, you're going to fall down, hurt yourself, get mad, give it up, do all this, and have a safe place until you get that skill and start feeling good about it. And so that's one of the things I'm proud of, is I think students go, I mean, we just finished an advanced beginner session of technique last night. And at the end of the night, the students were like, wow, thank you, man. You really, I'm willing to look bad in front of you and work on these things, because they're not good at them when they first start. And you have to get through that. If everybody thinks they're going to be a great comedian their first year or two, they're wrong.
Yeah, I know this.
You can do some good shows too, yet the consistency is what it's all about.
Yeah,
right. When you can get up and you consistently do a show that's like an 8 or a 9, well, that's how good you are. You're not as bad as your worst show, and you're not as good as your best show.
Yeah.
You're as good as the consistency that you can create. And so, again, I think my students leave, if they work with me, they leave my classes quite skilled, and then they really need the stage time. But now it's different, because the stage time is better because they're practicing good technique.
Yeah.
They're practicing good joke structure and good tags and good staging for the storytelling, so that their communication is clear, and how to build a show so that it gets funnier as it goes along, instead of it zigzagging up and down. Those are the kind of skills that other comedians see and go, wow, you know a lot. Well, I can teach that. Yeah. I can't teach people to be funny. We don't teach talent. We're never teaching that. That's ridiculous. You don't teach talent. You can teach the fundamentals of music, how to read music and play an instrument to somebody, and they can still be amazingly unmusical. Yeah. Right. Same thing with comedians. You teach them all these great skills, and if they don't have the talent, but the people who do have the talent, then they excel really fast, because they don't have to spend the years figuring out these things. They don't have to spend years figuring out these things, because I've figured them out, and I can present them in a class, get them to do the exercises, and then they leave my classes skilled. So when they're out practicing and doing shows, they're practicing good technique. Yeah. And that's what I offer. I mean, there's no magic here. There's no magic bullet. I mean, except technique. For me, the only shortcut in the world for anything that is difficult and complex is technique. That's it. Yeah. Learn what other people have learned before you, so that then you spend your 10,000 hours getting good at those things, rather than spending that half of that 10,000 hours trying to figure out what they are. Yeah.
I've met a lot of people out at open mics and shows who kind of fumble around. Not that every show I've done is perfect, not by any means, but I've met guys and gals who fumbling around, who have a great premise, You know, they have that great premise
Hmm.
from their personal experiences and whatnot, but then there's just no joke, there's no punch.
Hmm.
And I've talked to them like, have you taken any classes? They're like, no, you know, actually I just started doing this like a month ago. My friend kind of dared me into doing an open mic. I'm liking it, so I'm doing it. And you could tell, like, if you just kind of, you know, learn some technique, you might actually, yeah, be able to get to the funny a lot faster. And yeah, so I've definitely experienced that in technique. I've taken Greg's classes. They're amazing. They're fantastic, and the technique is absolutely the fastest way you're going to get good quicker. I would say, Greg. So you did mention you've been doing you've been teaching for 40 years.
Hmm.
Just real quick, anyone that we may know besides myself who've taken your classes?
Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg. I trained her. I helped her back when I was kind of teaching improv and getting on the edge of teaching stand up back in the back in the late '70s. Actually, is when
Wow.
that was, and worked with her, helped her work on the character she ended up taking to Broadway. Let's see who else. Let's see, Anthony Jeselnik. He was always dark, and he was like, and I was like, that's who you are, dude. Go with it. That's,
Yeah.
there's going to be people that like it, people that don't like it, and grow up. You're going to offend some people, and you're not in, and then you're going to find the group of people who love you and grow up. It's just like in real life. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like your comedy, and so
Yeah.
you have to accept. So he was kind of, and he was really, really good. I liked him a lot. Let's see, on television. Let's see who Lonnie Love, who has what's the talk show. Sherry Shepherd, which was also on The View with Whoopi.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a bunch of other
Yeah.
working comedians. Richard Villa, if you know his work, he's one of the only comedians I know. He's really huge in Mexico and in Latin America. He's the only comedian I know that can do a full hour in Spanish and
And
English.
English, right? Yeah.
Amazing, and he's huge in Latin America. LA people know him, but America doesn't know him very well.
Yeah.
Working comedians all know him, but in Latin America, he's like the second most famous. I mean, he has specials down there, and he had a Comedy Central special. There's a Comedy Central Mexico, and he did a special down there, and then he tours all over Latin America and stuff. So him, and then there's just
Yeah.
all these comedians out there. Christina Pajitsky is another one. She's married to Tom Segura, and she is a Netflix Mother Inferior. She's one, and I've worked with a whole lot of other people. I don't take full credit for because I did a lot of privates with them, and they
Yeah.
didn't, and so I don't use their names, even though you might even know who they are. And some of them actually ask me not to use their names. Don't tell people. Don't tell
Yeah.
people that I actually have a coach.
Of course. I mean, there's a lot of people out there like that. I mean,
Yeah.
and that spans into other entertainment businesses, actors, probably the same thing. You know, Tom Cruise
Well, it's
is going to
funny
tell you
because
who
a
he's
lot
training
of
with.
a lot of the really big famous actors though have a private coach that a
Absolutely.
lot of people don't know, and a lot of comedians have writers.
Yep.
Robin Williams had writers. People don't know that.
Yeah.
They Richard Pryor had a staff of writers that was helping him develop his shows. I mean,
Well, there's
a
a lot
lot
of
of these
people. I
don't.
mean, and you could probably attest to this. There's a lot of people who are fantastic writers, but they either don't desire to get on stage or they tried it and
Hmm.
it's not for them. Not everyone's a performer. I personally, I'm kind of lacking in the writing area, but I love being on stage and I love being goofy and being up in front of people. So maybe I need a staff of writers. We'll
No,
see.
and that's good to do that. When I first came here, probably the first thing I at the comedy stores, I wrote for Jimmy Walker, J.J. Walker.
Yep.
Wrote him some jokes that he ended up performing and stuff. So, uh, was it? I mean, it was just you're doing anything you can and writing jokes, and I was always pitching jokes to the comedians who knew me. See, you don't do that to other comedians that you're not, like Sam Kinison one time. I was hanging out with him and did a whole thing about with Sam. I said, it's like say you're mad about something, and then I said, just say I'm mad because I got no neck. And he used that for years. I pitched jokes once in a while, different, but I know them. You're right. You knew them. You hung around. You were around. They saw you. Because I don't go to people because I'm a comedy coach. They go, oh, you go around and give everybody. No, not unless you're paying me.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I can see things, but it's just way too arrogant. People have to come and ask for the help in some way or want it. Otherwise, it's on deaf ears anyway. And I don't, it's just so I wait for people to come to me. And then if they're open to something, then as you know, I'm always extremely specific about even one of the things that I'm really proud of, because now I'm training a stable of teachers to help me on the worldwide Zoom stuff that we're teaching. We're teaching in 2 different continents now, and more than that, we've had people from Australia and the Philippines and Singapore. We have guys Singapore right now. We get a lot of people from the UK, etc., all over the United States, Canada, because of Zoom. We're able to teach all these people. So now that we have more teachers, but the idea of the reason I can do it is because my technique is so specific. I can teach another teacher to teach this curriculum.
Yep.
Okay. And then they can teach another teacher in the future to teach this curriculum. So now it becomes it can have a legacy. It can, if my name is still attached to it, because the stuff is so good and works. It's being used all over the world and doesn't have my name on it.
Right.
And people will write me all the time going, I'm using your book and teaching a college course with it that's accredited. And then other people saying, I'm making a living off of your book. And I'll go, well, share. And I'll never hear from them again for some reason. They're, and then some people, and people that are teaching classes from my books and from my workbooks, because again, it's so specific. It's always something, they can go, okay, I'm going to teach you this. And then here's the exercise you're going to do. And then here's the skill you're going to end up with if you do that model. And therefore, other people can read it, understand it, and teach it. So, the only thing I wish, I guess, because I knew that was going to happen when I discovered this. And John Grinder, the man, the NLP guy that I studied with, my mentor, said that this is going to happen. Because when you work at this level of the technique, that it is a true fundamental, other people then can understand it and then, teach it. And then other people then will pick it up and they will teach it. And he goes, this is going to happen to you. So be prepared that people are going to pick up your stuff. And so it was really good to hear that, because it does bother me, but at the same time, it's making the world a better place,
Yeah.
I mean, there's something about just feeling good about helping other people articulate their sense of humor. And that's what I'm about. That's why things I'm proud about is what I call the solution-oriented feedback. Which is to say, in class, everybody's welcome to give feedback, but they have to give a solution, not an opinion and not a criticism. Only the solution. And you know this from the class is I'm picky about that. You don't need somebody to go, oh, that joke didn't get a laugh, take it out. What? You don't need some jerk off telling you that, because you've already stood there in the roar of silence. It didn't work.
Yep.
Help me fix it. So that's, that was also part of what I learned from the NLP, which was, I call it, solution. It's kind of positive psychology, and came from Milton H. Erickson, some other people, about don't tell me your troubles in therapy. Let's talk about a solution.
Yep.
Okay. And I picked up all that stuff and put it in my class. I teach my teachers that as well. That they have to, when there's something, what needs to be improved, and then you figure out what the solution is, and then you either rewrite the joke, make sure that the premise is better stated, whether their staging of their storytelling is good and clear, and so on and so forth. So, because it really is the skills that, people say, oh, you teach people a lot of one-line. Yeah, I teach the one-liner writing just to show them joke structure, and then we go into storytelling. And if you can't see the joke structure in one-liners, which is the simplest form, you're never going to see the complexity of when it's in a joke, it's in a physical bit, it's in a situation, and it's in a character, and how all those start to combine. You're never going. It starts to get so complex that if you can't see the basic joke structure in a one-liner, it's very hard then to understand it in a very complex story, character-driven stand-up comedy piece. I can, and that's the hard part for me, is to teach my teachers to sit around and look at a bit and go, okay, let's take this apart. What's going on in here? What's this person doing? And after 6 months of working with me, a lot of them are like, oh, now I'm like going, right on, you got it. You're seeing it. You're seeing what I'm seeing. And because you can't teach if you don't know how you do what you do, you can't teach it. Yeah. That's the first thing is to teach. You have to know how you do what you do. It's like I always say, and don't mean this in any way, because Robin was a friend of mine, but I think Robin would have been the worst teacher ever of stand-up, because he could do it. He'd get up and be funnier than almost anybody else I've ever seen. I don't think he couldn't explain it. They asked him on inside the actor studio, how do you write your material? So he grabbed a scarf from a lady and then improvised a whole bunch of material. Okay, he couldn't explain it to you. Yeah, he could do it, and he was brilliant, right? But how do you can't teach until you understand how you do what you do, break it down into teachable chunks, so that other people can learn it and practice it and get better at it. And then most importantly, then apply it to their own sense of humor. That's the other reason I keep my opinion out of everything, and my teacher's opinion out of everything, and my students' opinions out of everything. Is my job is to help you get these skills, these tools, whatever you want to call them, these fundamentals, and learn to apply them to your own sense of humor, so you can articulate what you think is funny. Yeah. Okay. And use those tools to articulate what you think is funny, because I make a distinction. I'm what I consider a technique-oriented teacher. We teach skills, and we help people get good at them, and then we help them apply them to their own sense of humor, and help them build their show that they want to build, not the one. The other one is what's called opinion-oriented teachers. They got a few techniques, but mostly they're going, I think that's funny, do that joke. I don't think that's funny. I'm offended by that. You can't have that in my showcase. And I'm appalled by that. Yeah. Because if it's a teacher's opinion, it's just their sense of humor, and their sense of humor, as I discovered, isn't better than anybody else's sense of humor. Yeah. It's unique. It's personal. It's your sense of humor. I love it when people, it's your sense of humor. And teachers, I think, that are teaching their opinion, one, they're passing on their own sense of humor. They're cloning themselves in a lot of ways. And that has some value. I mean, they're going to learn some stuff. Every teacher's going to teach you something. But I think the one downside is the whole thing, and this is what I've noticed over the years, is teachers who teach their opinion and this is what I do, you should do that. They're also passing on their own limitations. That's huge to me. Hopefully I'm not. I'm passing on technique that everybody can apply. My favorite thing is when a student does something with something that I taught them that I never would have dreamed of doing because of my own personal limitations as a human being. Go, oh my goodness, I would have never thought. That's my proudest moment, when somebody's better than me, went beyond what I taught them. to have the freedom to do something like that.
Yeah.
But when you pass on your own limitations, what I find is if the teacher's a one-liner comic, all their students are one-liner comics. If their teacher is a storyteller, these people are only storytellers. If they like to riff with the audience and do crowd work, then the students end up doing that. If the teacher is bad, their setups are way too long in their shows. Their students, their setups are way too long, and that's a problem. That's by not having, because that's not having a standard, and that's what I'm trying to set.
Right.
There's a standard, like set a bar to say, here is joke structure. No, it. Okay. Here is good storytelling, staging, and technique, and storytelling. The way I've combined the explanation of the what I call points of view inside of a story and joke structure. Oh, it's not set up and punch. It's from one point of view to another point of view. Those are the two parts of the joke. Oh, what's the setup and the payoff? And setup and punch become kind of inadequate at that point. That's why I've invented the language for that, so that we can, and to me, when you're doing jokes and stories like that, where the first part, second part are connected from one point of view to another point of view instead of a setup and a punch, for most comedians as well as audiences, that's invisible joke structure. Unless you've studied with me,
Right.
Until you can see the tools that are being used, people will, like with Robin, would they always go, he's just naturally funny. I can diagram, not that it's any fun or interesting, but I can diagram every single joke Robin did. I can show you exactly the structure, exactly the tools, exactly the states that he was using to construct every single one of his laughs. So yeah, he is naturally funny, yet he's still doing the consistency of those fundamentals of being funny.
Yeah. Greg, for anyone who's just like brand new in comedy, it's 2021. I know we got Zoom is in the picture now, but whether Zoom was here or not, if you met someone on the street, had zero experience, what are a few pointers you would give that person going into comedy?
Well, not to be too self-serving, but learn those fundamentals. My book, Step by Step to Stand-Up Comedy, has some of them, not all of them, because I've invented or let's say uncovered a whole lot since I published that book in 2000. And my classes are full of them that I couldn't put in a book. They need to be kind of taught live with people. There's so many things that just putting it in a book is inadequate. Yet, whatever it is, have a teacher, see if you can find a teacher that's teaching some fundamental basic information instead of just giving their opinion. That's one. Buy a bunch of joke books. The best ones I found are by Judy Brown. Get hers, because she collected jokes from a whole lot of comedians in the 80s, probably, something like that. Great joke books, man. And
I haven't seen those. Does she actually does she break them down? And
no, yeah, she just attributes to whoever. This is Jerry Seinfeld's joke. This is Louis C.K. This is Richard Pryor. This is George Carlin. This is Lily Tomlin. This is whomever, and just read them. And when you start understanding joke structure, you'll look at those jokes and you'll see all the different ways people go about connecting jokes, the two parts. And sometimes you have to kind of go, wow, you have to see the bit, because reading it, you kind of go, that's just not funny. And then you go and watch the bit and go, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because again, that's all the behaviors of how you respond, or your character is dealing with it, etc. That is just not in the words. Because, well, you know this from taking my class, because I also teach some basic stuff about real human communication. There's only 3 ways we communicate with other human beings: body language, vocal tone, and words. That's it. This isn't my work. This is out of UCLA, psychology department. I read a paper on that. And body language is 55% of human communication. Vocal tone is 38% of human communication, and words is 7%. That means 93% of human communication is not in the words. And that's why I spend so much time with people, getting them to loosen up and respond to the joke and be emotionally associated and relate to the audience, so that a full range of communication is happening on their part. So that's it, because it's not just the jokes. A big part of this is being a good, clear communicator with the audience.
Okay. So get books, get a teacher.
Yeah. My books are good. Some other books may be good. I mean, every book's going to teach you something. So read them all.
Yeah.
Read them all. And probably the things that they probably all have in common are probably something that is really excellent. I mean, that's what I did with acting. Read all the books I could find on acting and all the things that they all had in common. I went, oh, those are the things I need to know. And same thing when I was studying improv. Read all these improv books. Oh, all the things they all have in common. I went, oh, those are the things I need to know. Stand up, same way. But make sure that they're not just an opinion about something, or as just advice, but some kind of real fundamental skill that you can repeat. Like I said, here's a good one for students: don't steal material, steal techniques. Yeah. Watch how somebody does something and then go, oh, I'm going to do that now, but I'm going to have different material doing that. Oh, okay. Look how Bill Burr does a one-sided conversation with his son while playing baseball with him, right? Doing that whole thing. Raise your kid, just, teach him morals and stuff by playing baseball with him, and then he does it. And then he proceeds to do a one-sided conversation with his son. He doesn't play his son. He just plays him talking to his son.
Yeah.
That's a great technique.
Yeah.
Okay, of storytelling, a one-sided conversation. Before that, you can see Bob Newhart back in the 70s. His albums were huge because he did one-sided phone conversations. Another great technique, similar. Oh, there's that technique. Now let me try that technique, but let me do that phone conversation, one-sided, or a one-sided conversation with somebody with my material and my idea. Don't steal the material, steal the technique, because that's what's going to enhance. That's what's going to get you there faster. Again, the only shortcut is technique. Learn learn what other comedians are doing. And to me, that's my passion. If you want to know my passion is identifying those to kind of go, oh, look at that. And the comedian can do it, but they don't necessarily know how they do what they do. And that's where I come in. That's my job. Oh, here's this technique. Look at that technique. Oh, here's an exercise. You got a skill. So, and it is the only shortcut, but it's not a magic bullet. It's just a short, here's the one more distinction I make. I make a distinction between what I call the craft of comedy. I can teach it to you. It's a craft. It's skills, principles, techniques, mechanisms, structures, those kinds of. I can teach you those. I can teach them. I can teach them to anybody. Okay, doesn't mean they'll be good at them. You just know these things. Okay. The other thing is what I call the art of being funny. Can't teach that. You can learn it, but I can't teach it.
Yeah.
That's the 10,000 hours. Oh, I can teach you this. Now go out and put in your 10,000 hours and learn the art of being funny. And that only comes through trial and humiliation.
Yeah. That's the part where it's finding your voice, right? It's like taking all that time to really develop who you really are as a comic.
Yeah. And there are shortcuts for that too. That are in technique, which is because what ends up being people's voice is really a collection of material that really expresses their values, and anything that violates their values is what they're going to do material about. That's a huge shortcut right there. That's huge just for your audience out there. That's huge. Make a list of your values.
Yeah.
Anything that violates your values of any or your beliefs. is something you're going to have a negative opinion about, and negative opinion is the basis for premises.
Nice.
What is that negative opinion? And so that's a great place to start as a beginner, is to kind of go, well, even as simple as like, I value safe driving. Okay, my dad was a really good driver and drummed into our head, safe drive. Anybody that's not a safe driver, I got lots of negative opinions about. People who don't take responsibility for their own lives. I've got to leave. It doesn't have to be, spiritual, God, this or that. It's just, it's everyday things.
Yeah.
People that are on their phone and walk into you, or kids on their skateboards who, scare the hell out of you and stuff. I mean, we have these things, we have these values, and then that years of doing material that express those values end up being a voice. When I was doing the Westwood Comedy Store, I had a couple of discussions with Bill Hicks, and he wasn't Bill Hicks then. He was just some guy from Houston, or from Houston, that's where he came in. And he was, I was talking to him, he's going, yeah, I'm funny now, but there's something else, Greg. I don't know what it is. There's just something else. I don't know. Don't know yet. And shortly thereafter, he went back to Houston, and in the years that came after that, I saw him years later and went, yep, well, he found that. And his values, what I found as I modeled out him and watched him, he was very against hypocrisy. He was very anti-violence and guns, and very pro-pornography. And it's like he said, nobody ever died from fucking.
Yeah.
People die from guns all the time. So he was kind of the opposite of America, guns good, sex bad, kind of Puritan NRA view, and he was the opposite. And I think it's one of the reasons I think he was far more popular in the UK than in the United States. Over there, they were that matched their values better, and so he was looking at America, saying, and the things on hypocrisy. I loved one of his jokes one time. So he's doing something about Jesus and religion, and somebody come up and said, I'm a Christian. I don't like what you said. I don't like what you said. I'm going to kick your ass for what you said about Jesus. And Bill said, are you a Christian? He said, yes, I am. Bill said, forgive me.
That's great.
And that's the beauty of Bill Hicks, the genius of him, that he would find that kind of a thing down in there that, because that could have been like a laser beam, but Bill uses what's right there in front of him to just diffuse that, and so.
That's great.
Yeah. Again, your comic voice is already in your head. You just have, I've told you this, that voice that runs in the back of your head all day long is your comedy voice. You just need to learn to accept it, and then have the courage to say it publicly.
Yeah, to let it out. Yeah.
Yeah, because then you really have to make that choice. This is the really hard choice. The really hard choice is, do I want people to know that about me?
Yeah.
Do I want people to know that that I do revenge stealing? Do you want people to know that? Because I do. If it's a bad restaurant, bad service, I'm leaving with knives, forks, or a coffee cup. Right? But, I accept that about myself. Yeah, other people think I'm immoral, or, oh, that's terrible. Well, okay, fine. But that's what I do. That's a truth I'm willing to say. I feel like I just got cheated, and I'm not going to leave this restaurant being cheated. I want some compensation, so I take that into my own hands, because there's no real other venue to do it. And I probably in the equation really lost. A really nice fork for a $75 piss poor dinner. But it feels a little bit better than just going home without the fork, because I can use that fork for years going, oh, it's my favorite fork, yeah. So, but you have to decide, do you want people to know that about you? That's kind of other people that would have negative opinions and think that I'm wrong for that. Well, too bad. That's who I am.
No,
and I accept that, and I put that out there. You have to accept that darker side of you. That part of you that does say all that stuff and be willing to say it in joke structure. You
absolutely.
don't just say it. It still has to have those two parts that connect.
Yeah.
That's our canvas. That's the way we communicate with that little specific communication structure called a joke. And by the way, just for you know this, but when I say joke, I mean a single unit of humor. It doesn't matter where it's at in any of the mediums that we communicate humor. I use the word joke as a single unit. Whether it's in storytelling, one-liners, in a cartoon, like I said before, sketches, etc., sitcoms. Yeah. I just use that because once you understand joke structure, it's universal. On a deep level, it's universal all over the world. That's why my books have been translated into 5 different languages. They change the jokes, they change the language, but they don't change the techniques. They don't change the joke structure. They don't change the steps of the joke writing systems. They find examples for them and then teach those, and those stay consistent from one language to another. And that's when you have a fundamental, when it transcends language and culture.
Yeah, great. That's amazing, Greg. Just for anyone who's watching, wants to really know more about you, where can they find you? Where can they find your books? And for anyone watching this, I'll put links to all this below as well. So make sure you scroll down and check it out. Tell us a little bit about it, Greg.
Okay, the easiest way is my website, which is stand-upcomedy.com. Just the way you would spell it in real life if you hyphenate it. STAND-UPCOMEDY.com. Stand-upcomedy.com. Or just type into Google Greg Dean Comedy. Greg Dean Comedy into Google. You'll find like 6 pages of me on Google because of all the social networking and the blogs and the videos and the books and the other things that I have out there in the public. And there's a lot of academic papers that are published that I'm attributed to, that I'm quoted in academic papers out there from colleges all over the world and stuff as well. My book, Step by Step to Stand-Up Comedy, you can get it on Amazon. Step by Step to Stand-Up Comedy. But again, and you'll get a link to that right away if you just type in Greg Dean Comedy into Google. That's probably the easiest way. Greg Dean Comedy, Google, and you'll see all the different things that we offer, the classes, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing Zoom classes. Probably in June, we'll go back to doing IRL classes, in real life classes at some point here in LA. But I'm going to continue to build, because I had to build a business here online. It's taken months to build a whole business for Zoom.
Yeah.
And now like I said, I'm teaching people all over the world, and it's really, really remarkably fun to do that. Having people, people from like Yugoslavia, that doesn't exist, like Slovenia coming in, and people from Brazil come in all the time. And these people are so dedicated because they're getting up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning to take a class with me. Man, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
So I got a pretty good machine here now that we should be able to get back to you pretty quickly and keep you informed. Get on the mailing list with us and know the upcoming things, because I do weekend workshops on Zoom. We have regular technique 101 classes, and then application 201 classes, and how to get work classes. There's just a lot. It's more like a trade school, really, in a lot of ways. So like, come in, I don't know what I'm doing, and then we get you right out to the point where you can at least go out and start developing your own career, getting to that point. That's what it's about, because we really help you. As you know, we help you build your routines, help you build your shows.
Yeah.
So that it leads, if you're ready and willing to do the hard work of that it leads to being able to, especially when the world comes back to normal, be able to go out there and have, your 30 minutes worth of worked out material to show club owners and have a video of it, et cetera, to be able to start to build a career for yourself, et cetera, and get in other shows and get more experience, et cetera. So again, the only shortcut is technique. And so learn those techniques.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Greg Dean, for being here and sharing a bunch about comedy techniques and all that. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Enjoy working with you every time, Chris. You're doing a great job for comedians out there too with your show as well. Thank you for putting that out there, because it's anything that helps people be funnier makes the world just a little bit a better place.
Agreed. Hell yes, everyone. That was Greg Dean, the professor of comedy, dropping some of his wisdom onto all of you comedians out there. You want some more information? Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're going to be dropping new content. We got new videos. We got new live shows weekly. Make sure you follow along. All right. Peace.